I gotta say, I love the concept. You're doing a great service to this industry, so I'm super excited to be here.
Creating a podcast video series that focuses on the amazing stories within our space. Hey, contact center, customer experience friends, welcome to episode 3 of Origins and Journeys. So the last episode, our guest Anthony suggested we talk about the challenges for training and learning development in contact centers and how and why it's such a challenge and what can be done about it. So I thought it only made sense to bring my friend Dan McCann on because he's the CEO of Symtrain, which is a very cool situational learning software company that services the contact center market. But he deals with L&D teams all the time. So I thought, what a great person to bring on who's got a lot of stories around this industry. But before we get into the actual open forum section, I really, we need to stay on track with the Origins and Journeys concept, which is really to inspire the next generation of leaders in CX and contact centers and bring to light that there's so much opportunity in this space. And the best way we know how is to tell stories and bring on guests like Dan who have great origin stories. They came into the industry, they've learned a lot, and to have them share through those stories, what they learned and how they grew and developed into where he's at today as the founder and CEO of a software company. So, I guess just to jump right in, Dan, start us out. Tell us a little bit about your origin story, how you got started into the industry, and let's go from there.
Yeah, thanks, Fred. I'm excited about it, and thanks for asking me to join today. And the journey I really am excited to talk about are these folks who are trying to do a really good job, right? And how they learn to perform better and how they're getting coached up to, optimize what they're doing. And, I'll start with my journey, right? When I graduated college, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just always wanted to own my own business. And, I made a career decision that, hey, if I'm going to run a business, I better learn how to sell. Because anytime that company does poorly or gets in trouble, we got to sell our way. We could sell our way out. And so I went down the path of becoming an enterprise sales rep, all for the purpose of one day running a business, right? So over time, I retired from my sales career, and lo and behold, I started a business development company. We booked appointments for software companies and got them in front of the clients they needed, and then we started doing training and teaching them how to prospect more effectively and more efficiently. It was a company called Frontline Selling. So I ran that company for about 15 years. And we had a contact center, if you will, right? It was a very small one. It was a very niche type of outbound contact center. And I was the COO of that business we started, right? So I drew the short straw. I was a sales rep, but I ran operations. So, but it was a sales development business. So it was kind of like my passion. But what happened is, as we were bringing folks on and getting them job ready, like I wasn't very good at that job. But I loved it. Like I was an athlete in college. I wanted to be a coach. I coached my kids. I loved the concept of training and coaching. And I'll be honest, for a few years, I actually wore my own incompetency as like a badge of honor. Like, hey, we're weeding out the bottom 50% in the first 6 months. And it's like, no, you're not. You're losing half of your workforce was really the answer. But that's not what we were hearing, right? So I got really passionate about that problem, right? And it was a problem that I personally was creating. And we started leaning in and realized, hey, these folks are learning by doing. But the problem is they're learning on the job and they're asking people next to them, like, how do I apply this knowledge? How do I do this? How do I perform my job, right? And so what we figured is, people they need repetition. They need that sort of feedback, and it needs to be consistent. It can't be like Steve telling me one thing and Janet telling me something different, and I have to figure out like, okay, what do I do, right? And so we started leveraging technology so I could practice and get repetition on actually delivering the sales pitch, the prospecting outreach, the actual job tactics that I was doing And it was working, and folks were getting that repetition. So we started adding some analytics on the back end to score people and give them, that sort of background. And I'll tell you what, so we actually went from 50% attrition in the first 6 months with our new hire workforce. After not realizing that was a good thing, we brought it all the way down to almost single digits, and super excited. I was like, this is it. This is my calling. I'm now a coach. I now have a software that I can teach the world, how to do their jobs better. And back in 2018, we launched Symtrain, right? And so having a career as an entrepreneur, really loving that, having built a few businesses already, was really the origin journey into both the contact center space as well as Symtrain as a solution in the marketplace. So that's kind of my background and how I got to, start and launch Symtrain, and super excited about just the impact we've made in a few years.
So let me take you kind of back. What made you want to be an entrepreneur? I mean, other than the fact that it's super fun and really easy and, short hours in the day, I mean, what really started that though? I mean, did you have was your father, was a family member an entrepreneur? What got you there?
No, it's kind of funny. It's like you go around and you meet people that you deem successful, right? It's like, I deem this person successful, whether they're not or they are. Maybe they drive a nice car or whatever. And a majority of the people that I deem successful, I'm like, what do you do? Oh, I own a business, right? Or, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. I run a business, right? And that's not that, hey, that's the truth. But as a youngster, middle school, high school, that was kind of that was my lens, right? And by the way, for me, people I deem successful is they actually seem to have a lot of free time. They were doing well, but they also seem to have a lot of free time. It's like, what do you do? I run a business. Yeah, it's like, so I wanted to, when I was raising kids, I wanted to be available and around. I wanted to coach those teams. I wanted to be the first one on the field, the last one off, right? It's like, wait a minute, Dan, you wanted to be the first one in the office and the last one out? Nope. I wanted to be the first one on the field and the last one off when my kids were playing sports. So for me, those things kind of correlated, and that was the path to, say, an entrepreneurship. I did learn, Fred, that I was an idiot. Like, that wasn't actually true, but that was what got me down that path and through high school and then into college and wanting to go that path.
Nice. So when you got into the enterprise sales side, what were you doing? What were you selling?
Yeah, so I sold printing for a while. That was awesome. So not to date myself, but I did talk about a 20, 30-year journey. I'm about to turn 50 next month. So when I got my printing sales job, they gave me a telephone, which was cool. It wasn't even a rotary dial phone. There were digits on it. So I did have that phone, and I had a phone book. So next to the phone was the phone book, and it was about this thick. And I did get a pat on the back, and they said, go, good luck. And if you have any questions, come see us. And I said, yeah, I have questions. Like, what do I do? Like, how does this work? You just use the phone and the phone book. I mean, I don't understand. Like, what's your problem? So that was my first sales job. I did that for a few years, and then I moved into selling corporate travel for about 3 years, and that was really fun. But those were two of my enterprise sales positions: lithography and travel.
There you go. I mean, sales, funny enough, I actually started on the phones in sales too. And we talk about this all the time in software. Sales solves everything, right? So it's a smart move. I'm impressed that you realize that at that young of an age, and in order to be an entrepreneur, you really have to learn sales skills. There's a lot of people that build products that are great development minds that wouldn't know their way around sales to save their life, right? And that's where people like Jason get to come in, right, and save everybody. So that's awesome, man. You got into the contact center, you took on the COO role, and the journey went from there. And really that's I love the story. Everybody starts somewhere, right? And that's the thing, you didn't consider your sales jobs contact center, but you had a phone book and you had a phone. Some of us had cue cards. Some of us had a green screen application, to date myself, that actually did the dialing for me. But nonetheless, you started in on the phones, and you worked your way up, and now you're founder and CEO of a software company. And that's the stuff that I think people need to hear about, and that's the point of Origins and Journeys. So with that being said, I appreciate it. Love the story. Now let's get into the open forum section. I know the guys have been sitting there patiently, waiting for this, chomping at the bit. So, as I mentioned in the opening, Anthony had said that we really need to talk about this. I know I personally have spoken about this on different videos and in content. I know Jason and Aarde, we've talked about it. Obviously, Dan, you live it. So first of all, before we get into the actual whys and hows and all that stuff of it, first I want to take a consensus real quick, and I think I already know the answer, but I got to ask. Does everybody agree that the contact center industry in general have a problem with recognizing the value from learning and development and investing and really giving L&D and the training organizations a seat at the executive table? First of all, I'll start there. Dan, do we have a problem?
Well, I'll tell you, I told you I did this outreach business development business, and I did it for about 15 years. They had the same problem, right? When you start a job and you are a biz dev, you're like, oh, you go hit the phones and you do prospecting, right? In that 15-year period, they went from being an afterthought to having a seat in the C-level title. Like, I'm the chief, business development executive for the company, right? I sit next to my chief sales officer, chief marketing officer, right? So they've gone through that same journey. And I think L&D has the opportunity to do the same thing, right? To really if you think about what every company wants to do, they want to perform better. Well, how do you perform better? Get your people to perform better, right? And that's an L&D role. And I think there's a huge opportunity for L&D, Fred. Absolutely.
Okay. So you absolutely agree there's a problem, though, in the space in general, with a lack of focus and really, tool sets and budget and, for L&D.
Yeah. If not, my wife's going to be really pissed at me for starting Symtrain, right? So, but I apologize. Right, exactly. I spun the problem to an opportunity, but yes, the opportunity is based on that. There is an issue out there. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Jason.
Well, for me, like what I've seen is the companies either do it really well and they take it very seriously, or they're terrible at it and it's an afterthought and they are still playing a high turnover game or not understanding their part in like a terrible operation, right? Like I've worked with some companies, let's say like Transparent BPO out of Belize, like they have a whole learning and development, like staff team, they report directly to the CEO. Like they take that very seriously, and they have like after hours weekend programs where people who want to be a manager come in for like basically a ramp up. And if you pass, you could potentially be in line for a manager. You're not even a manager yet, but you're like going through this night school for management. Like they are legit. And I either see one extreme or the other. Either the companies are amazing at it, call centers, contact centers, sales teams, or they don't get it.
Okay, but I'm going to do my job and put your feet to the fire. Percentage-wise, yes, there's a problem, but my experience, and you can tell me yours might be different, but mine's like 99 to 1.
It's kind of biased, right? So like kind of like people in the police force and people in the medical field, all I see is problems because that's all I talk to, right? Like I don't really come across amazing companies who talk to a consultant about fixing their amazing stuff, like maybe making it better, but they're usually on fire, right? Like police only see the bad stuff because that's just what they see all day is just bad stuff. So it's kind of that. But yes, 99% of the time I see a company that has no training, no development, no long-term plan, no short-term plan. And most of the time what it is it's a trainer that used to be a salesperson they promoted because they needed a trainer. And then all the terrible PowerPoint slides are on that trainer's computer, and if that trainer disappears or gets sick or quits, like they have no more training and development program. And I usually scare most CEOs with that. Like, what happens if your trainer doesn't show up on Monday? And I've seen this before. What happens if your trainer goes to jail again and they can't come in? And then what are you going to do on Monday with your class of 30 people? I've been there, done that. Like I've had that scenario.
Okay.
And so,
Jason,
yeah,
right? You got out of jail. No,
I'm good. Yeah. Yes. I can't answer that.
Yeah, just don't call me to post bail.
No, I won't.
Okay, Aarde, what's your thoughts? Problem? Yes, no?
Oh, yeah. Major problem. Piggybacking off of, I love Dan's example and his origins and stories where sat down at a job, first day, here's a phone book and a phone. No learning and development. What do I do with this? Who do I start calling? Do I start with the A's? Do I start, great example of that. And that happens at every company I've ever worked for in the contact center space. It's that experience. And then there's some light bulb moment where a manager or director or whoever says, you know what, we need to start an L&D team. And they put a lot of time and energy into it, and then check back in on that project 3 months later, and it's completely stagnant. There is no growth in the project itself. That department is not getting the resources it needs. To Jason's point, there's some, single-threadedness to it where people can, can leave, get hit by a bus, and then it falls apart. There's this level of inertia that has to go behind it to continue the L&D piece. And that inertia has to be executive buy-in. It's got to be technology supporting it. And that's, exactly why we have Symtrain on today. But it's also the people themselves, because it's one of those roles and jobs when you're a trainer or a leader, you got to roll up your sleeve and do the dirty work. I've experienced firsthand leaders, team leads, where they have teams of 20 or 30 call center reps, and they never do a single development conversation. It's all, let me listen to the phone call. Yeah, you passed. Here's your scorecard. I'll see you on Tuesday. It's never a, where do you want to be in the future? How can I help you become a better employee? How can I help you be a better salesperson, customer service person, whatever it is? Those conversations are rare.
Yeah. So we all agree there's obviously a clear challenge in the industry. I'm not just making this stuff up in my head. Anecdotally, the stories that I've heard, the things that I've experienced are all, you guys see the same thing. So with that being said, the next question is, what do organizations do about it? I mean, how does L&D get a seat at the table? And I heard, Aarde, you said executive buy-in. That goes for everything, right? From the top down, every organization has to realize, and I think there's some things going on right now in our market in particular that are going to force this, and I'd like to get your guys' opinion on this stuff. So first of all, we've all heard about the Great Resignation. We've all seen the attrition rates since COVID. We've all seen the impacts, and the movement to home. We're now seeing the impact of movement back, or companies trying to force people back into the office. And we also got this new little thing which just cracks me up, the whole quiet quitting, right? Which just kills me. To me, at first when I heard it, you guys have heard of quiet quitting, right? You've read some of the articles about it, all that. Yeah. At first when I heard about it, I was like, so what? People are just, not doing their job and collecting a check for a couple of weeks until the company realizes. And then I got to reading about it, and I was like, wait, we need a new term for slacking off? For that's
always
really
been a thing, especially in sales, right? Before they know they should be fired. They know they're in the wrong spot. They're a square peg in the wrong hole, and they're just waiting for that meeting that they're dreading every single day, and they're just going to ride it out because they don't have the guts to do it themselves.
Yeah, or coasting, right? I mean, that's what we used to call it. You're coasting. But there's also the other side of that pendulum, which is, I think we've all seen it, in all the data and surveys show that employee engagement and people actually looking for work-life balance for what they're getting, that especially the younger generation, they're not going to accept status quo and being just a number anymore. And they're not going to accept working for a company that doesn't have a mission and vision that they can get behind. And the reason I bring this up is because I think L&D is a critical piece to this problem, which is, really providing people, first of all, the mission, vision, and understanding of an organization and why they should work there, right? Why they should be passionate about the job. Learning and opportunity to grow, and, career path assistance and guidance like Aarde was talking to. I think L&D plays a huge part in really fixing some of the challenges that we're facing as an industry. So I'm going to put it out to you guys. First of all, Dan, you live this stuff every day.
Absolutely. Just the quiet quitting thing, right? So I'm a Gen Xer, right? And we all thought we were badasses back then, right? So when we were Gen Xers, like, hey, we'll question things, right? Like, you should do this different, and like, you got to prepare me, or whatever the answer is. Like, we always question things. But then the millennials came along, and they actually held their superiors' feet to the fire, and they said, hey, go do something about it. So Gen Xers said, hey, this is broken. But then the millennials came and said, go fix it. I'm not even going to do anything until you go fix the problem that you created. And then this concept of quiet quitting, when you look at the other side of that as an employer and owning companies, like, oh, I hope nobody quiet quits on me. It's like, but what did you do? Like a lot of these people are signing in and saying, hey, look, my employers quit on me a long time ago, right? And we're just repaying the favor. Again, I don't endorse it, nor do I think it's the right way to go. But it's almost like when I was dealing with the millennials at my last company before starting Symtrain, and I realized, like, hey, I'm the problem. Like, it's not, people don't come to work and say, hey, I really want to get this new job and then not work at it, or I really want to get a new job and stink. Nobody says that, right? They want to be great. They want to do great things. And all of a sudden they kind of feel let down. And then it's almost like a reciprocal response. So the cool part about quiet quitting, putting your feet to the fire, is it forces companies to think, what do we need to do to get better, to prepare our people to take us to the next level?
Yeah, it makes sense. Jason?
I think the quiet quitting, it's interesting when you're talking about that, Dan, is I'm thinking of also the other example, which is I'm just going to take these Post-it notes. I'm going to take these pens home because the company owes me because they're not paying me enough. It's like in that same thing, like, you're not doing your job. I feel entitled to more. I feel like I deserve more, whether that's fair or not, like it's in that same bucket. I think when it comes to this learning and development, I think the biggest challenge that companies have is who to put it under. Right? And this is where I see the biggest bottleneck is who should own learning and development, right? Is that an HR function? Because they're dealing with the humans. So if they're dealing with the humans, they should be educating the humans. But is it a sales team? Is it a customer service team? Who's got the learning and development skills? Who's going to put it out there? And then who's going to own it? And will sales, customer service, processing, whoever appreciate it? Will they be involved? Like, who is that person at the seat of the table? Because you could create another branch in the org chart, but then that's another silo, and then, like, who is that person reporting to? So I think that's the first part every organization needs to understand is who owns this.
Right.
Whoever owns this, now do they have the right people who know adult learning and they can take it on?
Right. So while you were talking, Jason, and this Aarde, I'm going to lead right into you, man. I'm going to throw you a softball here. He started to sound a lot like what we talked about 5 years ago when the CXO position started coming in, right? Mm-hmm. Who owns customer experience? Customer experience is not service.
Nope.
It's not marketing on its own.
Nope.
It's an organization that crosses everybody. And L&D falls into the same. Now, you being a CX guy, Aarde, to me, it's the same conversation, just different title. Do we need a chief learning officer? Do we?
Yeah. Oh, you hit it right on the head. And you're right. This is a softball. You've got your verticals. So you've got your customer service team. You got your sales team. It's very vertical specific. You've got tops down or bottoms up. you've got different levels, team leads, managers, directors, so forth and so on. But then you've got these unique roles that need to exist that are horizontal, where they don't have a structure above and below them. They have the ability from a decision-making standpoint to go to every level of those vertical stacks side by side and engage with every single one of them and ask the hard questions and hold the responsibility to the people to the fire who are responsible for it. So someone like a CXO can go to an SVP of customer service and an SVP of sales and say, this is the experience you're developing from the sales cycle all the way until cradle to grave to the customer leaving us in the trading. This is what we expect, and what are the pieces that are missing. Same with someone who is focused on learning and development. That's just as crucial and just as important. It just isn't popular, isn't mainstream, and doesn't have its own, title or groups. At least not to the masses. Some companies get it, to Jason's point, but it's few and far between.
You just made me think of something interesting, guys. What do you think of the chief learning officer owning the employee experience?
I think that's where it comes down to, like, who what does this company look like, right? Like, you see companies where they have a title which is like chief people officer, right? Which is now a common thing. I think Gary Vee has that. I think companies like Zappos has that kind of a role where it's like, I'm in charge of all the people. Okay, what does that mean? Well, now this is not just HR and the dirty admin work and benefits. Now we're talking about the employee experience. Are we talking about learning and development? And then does everyone care? And you almost, if you're big enough, it's almost like you have your chief people officer, chief employee experience officer, and then you have sub people underneath you, which are then representing each department. So you have one that's the VP of salespeople, right? Experience, and then they're making sure that division is doing well and has the training they need. But then it gets really complicated, and most organizations can't manage what they're trying to manage as it is.
What I love about that, Jason, is Aarde was talking about kind of those verticalized stacks and making sure you go up and down the vertical. And you're talking about the horizontal stacks, right? So you need folks in L&D. First off, they should own coaching, right? And it's like, where does coaching live, right? Then where does L&D live, right? Where does learning? So it's like, you need them to cross over between the operational objectives. What are the KPIs we're trying to hit? How are we hitting them? And what's missing in our processes? And so as we talk about, Jason says the sales, you should have someone who's in the sales organization who ties back to the L&D process and the coaching process. CX in the support and service that ties back to how do we prepare them to be effective, and then how do we coach them to continue to be effective and make sure that content and delivery is hitting the mark and is being measured based on the KPIs of the people in those roles.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback a little bit here. I think one of the reasons why we don't see this being a popular thing, or this being, the next, what CX was over the last decade, is we're very reactive. So C-levels or people who own businesses are very reactive. They see something like a CSAT score or an NPS. Oh, that's the symptom. I need to fix it. I need to plug people in, give them responsibility, hire people who are experts to fix that problem. There's not a lot of metrics and KPIs that we're collecting or that's out there that says, are my employees developing themselves? Are they trained for the role that they're in already? Those types of assessments, those metrics, those data points, they're just not widely adopted, and we're not measuring or looking into them the way that we should as a kind of collective culture, business culture. And that's hopefully where Symtrain comes in, Dan. I'm trying to softball it over to you a little bit to tell us about how technology can help with it.
Well, hold on. Let's not get into the sales pitches. We're not here for that. No. I mean, right? Come on. So, all right, let's take a step back. So clearly, there's a need for it. We recognize it. We're not measuring it. We don't know how yet. Fundamentally, when I look at learning and development, I rarely ever talk to somebody that's got a real budget in L&D and has a real seat at the table. So, I mean, what do we do? If I'm if I'm a VP of operations and I'm bringing on, for the holiday rush, I'm bringing on thousands of people, and my L&D team is made up of a bunch of people with a bunch of PowerPoints that go through the normal training and then get them out to the floor into nesting. And then the nesting stage is a week, 2 weeks, where they have supervisor-led, team lead-led type of calling environments. And then they're out to the floor. But how do they change it? How do we get them? If I'm that VP, how do I get my L&D? Maybe that's it. Maybe operations doesn't see L&D as a partner in this. I don't know. This is not an easy.
Yeah. No.
They have to. Yeah.
And that's the key. It's an extension of their own team, right? And Jason talked earlier about silos, right? And do we really want to create another silo? No, we want to break down silos, right? And as the VP of operations, I have to look at my L&D organization as a partner in my journey. And Aarde said, how do I do that? Well, let's share metrics. Here's how I get measured. Can you guys help me drive this? As a matter of fact, will you take some of my metrics with the people that we're developing and how we're growing them as part of your journey? And that's where you see a lot of these companies do a much better job when they have people that are like, yeah, if this is how you're going to get measured, I'll take that metric on in my role as L&D to get those people prepared to do exactly that. And that's the first step, Fred, in terms of getting to that cohesive where you're breaking down the silos and they see each other as partners. Because now, oh my God, this person's driving my business and helping me get to the next level.
Yeah, and I think the big key with that is when you're sharing metrics, or everyone's like, all right, so here's my metric, here's what we're going for, KPI. The challenge for everybody in an organization that has a metric and KPI is what can they control and what can't they control. So when it comes from a learning development and a training perspective, I've dealt with enough trainers, I've been that guy enough times where it's like, you stop recruiting idiots and blaming me for not being able to train them, right? Like, I'll just shoot it like that. Or literally to the point of let me do the recruiting so that I recruit and hire people that I trust. And when I train them, I will own their success or not, because that's on me. Like, if you keep hiring square pegs, I can't do this. And so if you have the horizontal and someone's in the people person, which is they're handling the recruiting, the onboarding, the training, then they own all of that. And then they're handing that department somebody who they stand behind because they took it all the way. It's nothing worse than a recruiting manager versus a training manager versus a department manager. And what did you do? This is not what I would have done.
And Jason, Jason, just taking your history, right? And I've seen it where I said biz dev wasn't that important for a while, and then they became important, right? Think about marketing, right? Marketing for years have always said, my job's to drive awareness and build the brand. And sales teams were always like, just take a sales number. No, we don't impact sales. We're not a revenue producing org. The best companies that have the best cohesiveness between marketing and sales is when marketing says, yep, give me that number, I'll take it. That's my number. I'll take a revenue number. I'll generate awareness, build the brand so more people want to buy our stuff, right? And that's that. I mean, have you seen that in that side of the space where those marketing teams and sales work together are the ones where marketing's willing to accept a revenue number?
When it's done right, it's under the same leadership, which is a totally different topic for a totally different show. Is who owns SDRs and BDRs? Is that marketing or sales? But I won't pull the pin on that one. I mean, when the new organizations that have a chief revenue officer, they're tying in those departments and saying, if it's revenue related, marketing, sales, customer support, retention, it should be under one umbrella and everyone's rowing the same direction. So,
yeah. Well, thank you for saving us, Jason, because I was sitting there cringing on the inside going, don't go down that path. Don't go down.
I got you.
All right. So what I hear is intent, measurements. This has to, in my mind, this has to come from the CEOs. Just like CX, L&D, and a focus on learning and development and building an organization that provides opportunity for growth for employees. It's the CEO's job, right? I mean, in the end, if you don't have a CEO that supports that concept, how are you going to get the budget?
Yep.
I mean, that it sounds like the buck always stops at the same place, and in the end, I think it is the C-level and the board's responsibility to change the way we think about hiring and learning and development and people and employee engagement, just as it was 10 years ago when we first started talking about customer experience. Yep. And that to me is, in the end, for you CEOs out there watching, hopefully you believe that. I hope that's the case. Would you guys agree? That's really what it all comes down to is you have to have somebody stand up in the boardroom and say, look, teaching our people and educating them and giving them opportunities to grow, it's essential for our business, right? In our industry especially.
I'd like to say, piggybacking off of what Jason said earlier, he had made a great point. L&D is not easy. Doing it right is not an easy task. It takes a lot of inertia. That train, is at a dead stop at the train station. You got to get it going, and then once it does, hopefully it'll continue going down the train track. I think what is happening is, and Jason, you articulated it almost perfectly, it's a passing of the buck. It all starts with our employees are leaving us. They're attriting, they're leaving. We've got high attrition. How do we prevent that? You first go to the hiring people, say, all right, hire better people. They come into learning and development to training, and they only own them from the training on. And then post-training, initial training on onboarding, there's very little ongoing development, career pathing, pipelining into leadership roles, assessments to see whether or not the person was hired for the right role, or maybe they're hired into sales, but really they're actually better at customer support. Maybe we should move them over there and give them a different title or a promotion. There's little of that going on with one person who is responsible for all of it. What I just described, those three things, I can see an HR department owning some of that. I could see each individual department owning the onboarding and training. And I could also see no one owning this person's in the wrong role. They should actually be in sales or marketing or customer support. So I think that's where the problem is. It's too fragmented, and there's no one who's working horizontally across.
Yeah, I think, Fred, this is a great topic. I've heard you tell me in the past that, companies that are customer centric are leading with maybe the wrong metric, right? They should be more employee centric if they really want to get to the next level, right? And so that's the journey that companies need to start thinking about. I can give you 27 different models on the buyer journey and the customer journey, but as Aarde said, I could probably find it because this is what I do for a living, but there's only like 2 or 3 that actually walk you through the employee journey, right? And that's where companies are really going to move the needle.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, with all the things we talked about before, with quiet quitting, with the need for the younger generations to have a mission, a vision, to be a part of an organization, to have a path, I just don't see any option. I think companies have to focus on the employee experience. And not that it's, customer experience to me, in my mind, is literally like a 0.1 step below the employee experience. But in the end, I would gladly fire a client if my employee did the right things and that client comes back and tears into them because of something that was out of their control or is inappropriate. When I measure things, I look at employees as the most important piece, because without them, no matter what you do, you can't scale anything. The people are the most critical piece. So give them a path, give them a passion. Not that everybody's going to come into the contact center market and be super passionate about making a career around call centers. I certainly didn't. When I first came in, I was like, yeah, it's a job, right? That's all it was. And I think that's how a lot of people start. But I got lucky. I had a lot of great mentors. And I think it's people at our level and the leadership's responsibility to say, look, guys, there's great opportunity here. You just have to be, we'll give you the tools. We'll give you the training and the opportunity to grow. You just have to do the work. Yep. And it's okay if you want to do this job as a 9-to-5 job. There's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly fine. But if you want more, we got the things that can help you get there. And that's just my opinion.
Well, let me jump in there, because I think we talked a lot about quiet quitting, which we've always had slackers. We've always had underperformers. We've always had people who, trim the fat. If we had to, let go 5% of the team for one reason or another, everyone knows who's on that list. Even the people who are on that list know that they're on that list. Let's talk about the other people.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about the top 10%, the people who are overperforming, who are striving to do their best, who are reaching out and probably listening to this podcast because they're inspired and doing their own work on the side to learn and develop themselves. Those are the people who I have fear of quitting because they don't have enough attention. They don't have pipelines. They don't have mentorship programs. Those are the ones that if you lose them tomorrow, to Jason's point, or if they go to jail for a couple days, your business really suffers. So how do we protect them? And what are some good strategies around that?
I love that because, what do you guys think? First of all, I think this plays into everything we've been talking about, which is, invest in your employees and do all the right things, give them learning and development. But Jason, when you find that top 10, 20% that are producing 80% of the results, how do you invest in them? I could hear an old boss of mine a long time ago, and this was not one of my mentors, say, well, we can't move that person into leadership. They're the best salesperson we have. And you know what? Quite frankly, the salesperson didn't want to be in leadership either. They thought they did because they thought that they would make more money and they'd be happier with the power. And a year later, they find out they're a terrible leader and they're just better closing deals. But Jason, what do you do with that top 20%?
Again, another topic for another show where you and I have talked about this before is what to do with people and leadership and management and coaching. I won't even start that one. That's an hour-long soapbox for all of us or more. So I think one of the biggest things with what you said, and I learned this years ago, was some really good management math. And I say this, and obviously I'm more on the sales side, and the metrics are very easy on sales, which is fun for me to play in that game. It's like you're either doing good or you're not. There's a scoreboard like sports. We're either winning or you're not. With someone who is a B or a C player, if they're doing, let's just use a number of 6 sales a week, right, in some metric. If you get them to do 50% better, then now they do 3 more deals, and now they're doing 9 deals a week. If you've got somebody who's doing 10 deals a week as your A player, you get them to do 50% more. They're doing 5 more. Now you have 15. Now you have 5 more instead of 3 more. Literally, there comes a point where you just even stop focusing on the B and C players. Put things on autopilot, but don't coach them. A lot of people say, let me coach the bottom and lift it up. It's like, yeah, but you're helping someone go from 1 to 1.5. What if I could help someone go from 3 to 5 who really wants it and is open and is excited? Because winners want to win more. Now, of course, you have that top salesperson who's just toxic. They think they're gods. They have a huge ego and they don't want any feedback. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about having the right people. Then you give them everything you can. Those are the people you coach and lead. They want it and you invest in them like crazy, and then that will trickle down, and the right B and C players will go, I want that attention too. I want some support. And you tell them, okay, cool. You meet these numbers and then I'll give you everything I have as well.
Yeah, right. You talk about putting stuff on autopilot, right? That's one of the reasons, we started Symtrain, right? Is automating those exercises so people can get better. So Jason, my challenge, that we took on and said, I want this, is to get them from a 1 to a 6, not a 1 to a 1.5, right? If your best people are at 10 and you got people at 1, either to get them to 6 or help them find the right career that is more suited for them, right? And so having that sort of those exercises, the ability to work and learn how to perform better is really a mission that every company should take. I'm not saying every company should use sim training, but half. But you know, at the end of the day, they should take on that mission. Do our people have the opportunity to get better? And Jason said, even if it's paced, self-led, right, is giving them those opportunities so they can go from a 1 to a 6 and be part of the team and feel part of the culture and help this company grow and do better, right? And you know, maybe the percentages, you know, maybe it's 50% for, 10 to 15, but the other folks, I don't want them to get to 1.5. I want them to get to 6, right? And that's the big, you can make some impact there. And the beauty of it, I do agree with Jason, is how much manual time, energy, effort, and resource are you going to tie to the 1s versus the 10s? And I think you can flip that measure, right? Give more time and energy to the 10s, but the ones that are in the 1s, let them do things on their own and give them those opportunities to get there and improve.
Okay, so L&D owning that piece. Let's bring it back to the L&D. Does L&D? I kind of led us a little off track with that one. That one's on me. So does L&D own that piece? The coaching. This is.
Yes. I'll start. I'll let Aarde and Jason go, but the answer is yes, right? And here's the key. Okay. L&D, up your game and beg for it, ask for it. When the sales leader keeps it from L&D, get in the office and tell them, that's my job. I have to make these people better. I own coaching. I'm gonna work with you to get us better, right? So L&D should and does own it. They just need to stand up and take it when it's not given to them.
What's that quote again?
Agreed.
Master of some, master of none. So I agree. L&D's got to own it all from cradle to grave. If they don't, they're just going to pass the buck. When it comes to the C levels coming down saying, hey, attrition's really bad, we got to fix this, L&D's going to be like, well, I only oversee onboarding. I give them the basic tools to do their job. It's not my job to make sure that they are performing at a higher level or trying to grow themselves. It's not my job that sales didn't hit their numbers or, it's just passing in the buck. So yeah, they have to own it.
Yeah.
And this is where the challenge is for L&D to own it. If L&D is run by HR, which is what I've seen in many organizations, can that trainer help a superstar? Can that trainer from HR help LeBron James be a better LeBron James at his sport, at the one thing he could improve, right? Help Tiger Woods fix that one thing for 1% to make him mad. Usually not, which is why they have to have experts in those departments underneath them who says, I am a training god in sales. Just let me add them.
Yep, I totally agree. So to give a little experience, I'll give you a little story of what we did at the first company I worked at. We had an HR people, we call it a people team, but we oversaw customer service. Customer service had their own recruiter, and that recruiter was dotted line into HR, but that recruiter sat on the customer support floor. They went to all the customer support meetings, town halls. They were in all of the KPI meetings with the leadership. And then we copied and pasted that into the learning and onboarding and training team. They're embedded into the customer support team. Although the budget was a shared budget, it wasn't customer support paying for those team members. It was a shared budget between customer support and, HR or learning development and things like that. So it can work. But yeah, to your point, you can't have someone who is sitting in HR in the HQ somewhere, trying to train Tiger Woods how to play basketball. Doesn't make any sense.
Trying to train. I wonder if Tiger can play. I mean, I bet he's a baller. I bet he can shoot. At
most
least,
of them
you would
can.
think.
Most great athletes can do other sports really, really well.
Do anything.
Yeah. Not that I was a great athlete, but pretty much give me anything with a ball and I can play the sport well. But you put a ski or a skate on my feet, and I'm like a freaking baby deer. It's ridiculous. So anyways, the sidetrack. All right. So I've got another question for you guys, and I've been thinking about this a lot. When I look at L&D and the fact that they don't have a budget, they really don't have a seat at the table, do you guys believe that part of the problem is that there really hasn't been any change in adult learning from a technology perspective in a very, very long time. And no, Dan, I don't want you to do a pitch. Don't do it.
You don't know me. You don't know me that well because I don't pitch very often.
I'm just teasing you, man. I'm just teasing. But when I look at this, I think about CX has had a ton of innovations. Sales and marketing, that industry in the technology space, a ton of innovation. I look at learning and development, and adult learning, other than understanding the psychology and the way that people learn and the mechanisms and tools like Zoom and stuff to deliver it virtually, the LMS tools, knowledge bases, none of those are like big ROI movers, game changers. In my opinion, there hasn't been a lot of innovation in L&D ever. What do you guys think about that? Is that part of the reason why nobody really invests in L&D, because there's nothing really exciting that's going to be a big technological advancement? And this is me being a tech geek, so I'll put it to you guys. What do you think?
Oh, I've got tons of opinions on this. I'll kick off. I'm gonna pull a little bit of a grenade here, so I apologize. I'm pulling the pin. It's a culture issue. Some other cultures, adult learning, whether it's like college or it's in a work environment, is something they strive for, something they focus on. Here in the U.S. or North America, it's less popular. The college admission rates are, stagnant, I would say, not dropping, but they're not really necessarily going up. We've got these amazing colleges that you can take online courses. You don't see their numbers in attendees and students increasing in droves. I think the same thing goes with a job. People, at least in the U.S., culturally join a job. They get hired, they learn just the bare minimum, and then they don't really care about doing the extracurriculars or picking a career path, which is essentially like picking a major, as much as someone else in a different culture who may, we'll say India, for example, where they're the breadwinners when they're working in a contact center. So they're going to focus on learning and understanding everything they possibly can so that they can move up or sideways or lateral or have another job business potential. So I think it's a broader cultural thing versus it being specific to business. Okay, so
and I was going to say that the needle's moving, right? And I'll talk about it from the point of like venture capital and where people are putting their money. The truth is, there hasn't been much innovation. It just hasn't, right? You talk about video-based learning. Like, what is that? Just a different talking head or PowerPoint talking head, right? Somebody's just talking at me. And there hasn't been a ton of innovation and there hasn't been a ton of investment. But if you look over just the last 2 years, right, the investment community is leaning in towards these different technologies that are really changing the game in, how people learn and how they develop employees and that adult learning type of capacity. And they are looking to where can we move the needle. Now the technology's out there. You got AI, you got, virtual VR, right? You have all these different technologies that people can utilize to get people to perform better. So the money's now moving there. I've had a lot of VCs tell me, it's like, let L&D, it's a dead space, right? It's like, well, not anymore. It's not. So because people are starting to develop solutions that are really capable of changing the game.
Yeah. Jason,
thoughts? And what I would say is I had a great thought, and then Aarde was talking about it, and I've never thought about that from a U.S. cultural standpoint, and where people, public school system, what it teaches you to do, and you just want to get done with school and then get out in the world, and then like you just see that in organizations where people, like, you can see that kind of public school non-continued education, right? I don't have the stats, but like the terrible stats about how many books adults read once they finish school, right? High school or whatever, and how people basically don't read and they're not furthering themselves and they're not trying to learn more and develop more, which I think is one part of why companies struggle with that is that nobody cares and no one takes it serious. Not nobody, but most people don't take it seriously, and most people aren't eager for it. And the ones who are rock stars. And if they're not in the right environment, they're just going to leave and take their ball somewhere else and find a different organization that cares. So I love that point. And I think there's some cool technology out there, some cool AI, machine learning based role playing scenario things you can do. There's that cool stuff. But I think it all comes down to something we talked about earlier, is it's got to come from the top down. Most of the organizations I see, and this is a silo problem, which is a topic for maybe another episode, is where silos come from. And I'm working on another book about that. But like, if leadership from the top, if the CEO, founder, president, whoever at the very top doesn't believe in it, it's never going to work. And that's what makes these tech companies, it's hard to sell, right? And obviously that, Dan, that's what you face all the time, is getting them to take it seriously and allocate their budget instead of like just continuing to play the numbers game of tearing through employees, or thinking, oh, if I have the right product, I don't need to train them on it because it's just going to sell itself, right? And so many issues where companies from the top down, and here's where the short punchline of it all is, somebody at the top probably got there either because they could sell the living crap out of anything and everything, and so they built an organization around sales, or they're a tech wizard who built something that field of dreams mode where they think if I build it, everyone will come. And so they didn't have to go through training to learn how to be amazing. They're just amazing. And then they just take it for granted because they can see the matrix, and they don't understand why we would invest in anything to help other people see the matrix.
Yeah, why can't my employees do what I did, my career path? That's what exactly.
It was easy. Just pick up the phone and the phone book and just make calls, right?
Yep.
That's it.
Exactly.
Well, I think we could probably talk about this for many more hours. And we kind of saved ourselves from a lot of different variations and offshoots. I think we did pretty good. Dan, it's
thanks, Jason.
Dan, it's been awesome. I really appreciate you coming on, joining us for the conversation, sharing your origin story. For all those listening, watching, if you're still on, hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it half as much as we do in doing it. I mean, these are a blast. As always, Jason, Aarde, and I, we appreciate you. Go share this out to your community. Hopefully the one thing that really got me excited early on, and I shared this with the guys, is somebody told me they wanted to share these origin stories with their agents. And that's the intent. In the end, this industry provides an opportunity to grow any path you want. You want to become a CEO of a software company? The contact center path is obviously there. I know a ton of them that started out on the phones, and if you want to be a consultant, if you want to help people select technology or build your own, I mean, there's so many paths, not just within the contact center space, but the contact center space can help you grow into. So with that, we appreciate you guys, all of you. Share, like, comment, let us know what you think, what we should talk about next, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.